Hi, everybody. I'm Pamela Rose, and this is something I'm incredibly passionate about. I love the blues, but whether you're a blues fan or not, the story of the development of the blues is such an interesting look into our cultural history, our uneasy racial history. It really is quite a story. When you follow the story of the women in the blues, it's even more extraordinary. There was, and it all kind of started for me because as I was doing a lot of research about early jazz women, I noticed that when a number of really important people like T-Bone Walker or Jelly Roll Morton spoke about the first time they heard the blues, they said it was from a woman. And I began to kind of follow this line about how this tradition of these truth-telling songs, these trouble songs, was carried by the women. It was actually the women in the early classic era of the blues in the 1920s who entirely popularized this form and injected it through early gramophone records and kind of created the record industry in a way as we know it now. And it was the success of these women that made us all cognizant of the blues. But even if you're not a blues fan, you might want to know that actually the development of the blues is entirely essential to everything about American popular music. It's there in jazz, it's in swing, it's in funk, it's in R&B, it's in gospel music, it's even a little bit in country music, certainly rock and roll. So we have quite a story to tell. And I will also say that as these early women started writing their own songs, they began to create this voice that was so fierce and so independent and very different from the nice sweethearts and sisters of the sort of Irish ballads of popular music pre-1920. These women were basically had a very different message. They were saying, if he doesn't treat you right, move on, honey. And these women weren't afraid to say that they misbehaved and they drank too much and they occasionally smoked and they broke hearts and they had their hearts broken. And we love to experience all of that with them. And I think that this message had a lot to do with informing a lot of certainly the women's music movement in the 70s and the civil rights movement. So we're going to take this story all through from the very beginning. I have, we'll be singing in class. We'll be doing some moaning along. There are a ton of sing-alongs, some video footage as it happens, and a lot of audio and a discussion of the history. We start from the very beginning with the African diaspora and those early trouble songs and those early tent and minstrel shows. So that's, Ma Rainey and Sippy Wallace and Ida Cox. In the second class, I'm actually going to do a little bit of blues theory that we'll be singing our way through so you can understand why this structure was so different and impactful on American music. And then we'll move on to how blues evolved along with the Great Migration into the cities and entered the swing era. So that's, Dinah Washington and Billie Holiday. We'll also have a lot of Alberta Hunter. We'll have Memphis Minnie during that class. The third class, we really open up the book into these women who had something to say and the relationship of the church and the blues. The blues constantly bounced its way into the church very early on and then was sort of kicked out and then brought back in. And then in the 70s, in the late 60s and the 70s, had a big voice with the civil rights movement and the women's movement. So that's Nina Simone and Aretha Franklin and Mavis Staples and Sister Rosetta Tharpe and Etta James. And the last class will be talking about the women who rock, and that sort of takes it from the 50s to today. So it's Ruth Brown and Janis Joplin and Big Mama Thornton and Bonnie Raitt and Ruthie Foster and go on like that. It'll be fun. You'll be clapping and singing along, whether you're with us. I hope you're with us, or you're at home. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to laugh a lot. You're going to be very moved. I think these stories are so compelling and teaches us a lot about ourselves. Whether you're a blues fan or a woman, you're going to learn a lot about yourself, and we're going to have a good time doing that.